This episode of Food Psych is brought to you by my online course, Intuitive Eating Fundamentals. If you're ready to break free from diet culture and reclaim the life it stole from you, learn more and sign up at christyharrison.com/course. That's christyharrison.com/course. Welcome to Food Psych, a podcast about intuitive eating, health at every size, body liberation, and taking down diet culture. I'm your host, Christy Harrison, and I'm an anti-diet registered dietitian, certified intuitive eating counselor, and author of the book Anti-Diet: Reclaim Your Time, Money, Well-Being, and Happiness Through Intuitive Eating, which is available now wherever books are sold. Join me here every week as I talk with fellow anti-diet advocates about their journeys toward peace with food and their bodies. And by the way, on this show, we bleep out diet culture stuff like weight and calorie numbers, but we don't censor swear words or other adult language, so listener discretion is advised.
Anti-diet revolution, we're for health at every size. Eat the foods you love. Food Psych.
Hey there, welcome to episode 247 of Food Psych. I'm your host, Christy Harrison, and today I'm talking with fellow anti-diet writer Kelsey Miller for her fourth appearance on the pod. We talk about her experiences of pregnancy in a larger body, adjusting to postpartum body changes, being a new mom, navigating the wedding industry as a plus-size bride, and so much more. I can't wait to share our conversation with you in just a moment. And just a little content warning / trigger warning for this episode, since Kelsey is in process right now navigating the experience of postpartum body changes. So if that's something that might feel triggering for you to hear about that process, you may want to wait for a little bit to listen. I will also say that this episode was recorded a while ago before the pandemic, so it's one of the last of the pre-pandemic recordings I think that we have. It was also obviously recorded before the recent uprising for racial justice, but Kelsey has since written a great piece about how the body positivity movement has failed to be inclusive, and we'll link to that in the show notes for this episode. Speaking of the timing of these recordings, I just want to also mention that last week's interview with Asher Pangiris was also a pre-pandemic and pre-uprising recording, which I forgot to say in that episode. Before I answer this week's listener question, I want to announce an exciting new aspect of the podcast that's going to be coming down the pike very soon. I'm going to start having guest co-hosts occasionally help me answer the listener questions. So in a few weeks, we'll be debuting that segment with a member of my team answering the listener question. And then in season 8, we'll have some more great folks come in periodically to help me host the Q&A segment. Which leads me to my second announcement, which is that we are going to be taking a summer hiatus for the month of August. I believe we've taken a summer break for all of the 7+ years I've been doing this podcast as a way to recharge the creative batteries and work on making the next season better than ever. So that's what we'll be doing this year too, but we'll be reposting some great episodes from the archives so that you can catch up on anything you missed or re-listen to some classics that definitely bear repeating. So we'll be putting out new episodes until the end of July, and then we'll be back on Labor Day with season 8 of the show. And with that, I'll answer this week's listener question. It's from a listener named Jay who writes, I'm a teen and I live in a dorm at my high school normally, but I'm living at home due to COVID-19. My mom is a very big advocate for diet culture and has always been a weight fluctuator. I have a history of bulimia, anorexia, and binge eating disorder due to my occasional reminiscence of the thin privilege and constant compliments I got about my appearance as a gymnast before I hit puberty. My mother has body image issues herself, criticizes my body, and has me on a diet right now because I had a bulimic episode at home. I have no energy and I'm not enjoying food right now, and I have a lot of resentment towards her. How can I help her believe in letting go of diet culture? I've tried and she just won't listen. So thanks, Jay, for that great question. And before I answer, just my standard disclaimer that these answers and this podcast in general are for informational and educational purposes only and aren't a substitute for individual medical or mental health advice, which means they don't constitute a provider-patient relationship. So first of all, Jay, I'm sending you so much empathy and compassion. It's really so understandable that you'd feel upset and resentful in this situation. And it really sucks, frankly, not to have her support in healing your relationship with food and your body. And from that place of compassion, I want you to know that bulimic behaviors are extremely dangerous. So you need and deserve professional support from an eating disorder treatment team who can help you stop engaging in these harmful behaviors. You can start by asking your mom to get you a treatment team, which means getting an eating disorder therapist and dietitian whom you work with one-on-one, usually on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Not only is it essential for your recovery to get professional help, but in time, it may also help your mom understand that dieting just isn't the right approach for you. To get the help you need, I would really stick to framing it as, I have an eating disorder that's putting my health at risk and I need help, right? Making it about you. Because if you can make this about your needs and your healing, rather than about convincing her to change her entire way of thinking about eating and food and body stuff, you may have more success. Now, you may already have a treatment team you can call on, but if not, or if you need to switch providers for any reason, I have a list of recommended providers who are all very well versed in disordered eating and the role that dieting plays in it and can really help you in your recovery. And that list is at christyharrison.com/providers. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes for this episode as well, which will be available at christyharrison.com/242. And by the way, my name is on that list of providers. And right now, I'm actually not taking any new clients who have active eating disorders. So instead, I would direct you to the other providers on that list. Again, that's christyharrison.com/providers, or to the National Eating Disorders Association, which can provide additional referrals. And you can find them at nationaleatingdisorders.org. We'll put that link in the show notes for this episode as well. I will say that I've worked with teenagers in the past with eating disorders whose parents weren't necessarily on board right away with getting them treatment or didn't feel like they were able to justify the expense of treatment. But in those cases, persistence and sometimes enlisting other trusted adults to help talk to the parents, like another relative or a school counselor, eventually did help the parents see the importance of eating disorder treatment for the kid. The thing is, parents in situations like this are usually trying to help, but just aren't sure how to do it. And as a result, they may go about it the wrong way. They may also be unaware that their own experience with diet culture leads them to think that dieting is the answer, which is the case for so many people in this culture. But unfortunately, dieting only exacerbates eating disorders. So trying to manage it with a diet can inadvertently make things worse. When people develop a long-held reliance on diet culture, like it sounds like maybe your mom has, it can be difficult and sometimes impossible to convince them to let it go. That's really hard when that person is someone close to you in your life, especially if it's someone whom you live with and love and seek acceptance from. But when you can make it about you and your need for help and your eating disorder recovery, they often will listen better than if you try to debate them into giving up diet culture wholesale, for themselves in addition to for you. So again, I just want to send you so much compassion and to acknowledge your strength and maturity in asking this question and reaching out for help. It's really amazing, and you really sound wise beyond your years. And above all, remember that these issues you're struggling with are not your fault. It's really the culture that we live in, and these are things that so many people go through with their parents because of this culture. So you're not alone, and you deserve help, and everyone else struggling with these issues also deserves help and peace with food and your bodies. So I hope that helps, and if you want to submit your own question for a chance to have it answered on an upcoming episode, go to christyharrison.com/questions. That's christyharrison.com/questions. And then if you want to ask me all your questions about intuitive eating and get support for recovery from diet culture, you can come join my online course, Intuitive Eating Fundamentals. That's where I have a monthly Q&A podcast just for course participants, where you get to ask me your own questions every single month and have me answer them and listen to hundreds of answers I've given to other people already so that you can work through the nuances of intuitive eating and really put it into practice in your own life. The course also has 13 modules of audio and written content teaching you the principles of intuitive eating, plus a private community forum just for course participants where you can get daily guidance from me and my team, as well as hundreds of other great people who are on this anti-diet path with you and supporting you along the way. One of them is a participant named Mindy who had this to say about the course. This program was pivotal in helping me break free from the food, diet, and exercise obsession, the self-shaming, and the constant underlying feeling that I'm permanently broken, out of control, etc., that comes from diet culture. The feeling of freedom and normalcy from diet culture is invaluable. My mind is freed up, and I'm enjoying things more than I used to because I'm not thinking about food or feeling shame. I am getting my life back. If you're ready to join Mindy and hundreds of other people in breaking free from diet culture and reclaiming the life it stole from you, you can learn more and sign up for the course at christyharrison.com/course. That's christyharrison.com/course. This episode of Food Psych is brought to you by Be Nourished and their Body Trust Provider Certification Training Program. This one-of-a-kind program, led by Hillary Canavy and Dana Sturdivant, who've both been guests on this podcast, is an invitation to bring a radically compassionate paradigm into the world. If you're a helping professional who wants to offer weight-inclusive care, this program is for you. Body Trust is a strength-based, trauma-informed, scientifically grounded model of care informed by social justice movements, Neva Perron's developmental theory of embodiment, Bobby Harrow's cycle of socialization, Adrienne Marie Brown's emergent strategy and pleasure activism, Desiree Adaway's liberatory praxis, the fat underground, and more. Hillary and Dana have worked together for over 15 years leading transformational workshops, groups, and retreats, as well as training healthcare providers to do better. If you're a helping professional who wants to offer an alternative to the traditional weight paradigm, consider applying to become a certified Body Trust provider. Learn more at benourished.org. That's benourished.org. This episode is also brought to you by ThredUp. It's finally summer, and I'm ready to retire my sweatpants, which is why I just sold a bunch of old clothes on ThredUp using their closet clean-out kit and made room for some new warm weather loungewear. ThredUp is the world's largest online thrift store with up to 90% off estimated retail. Shop from over 45,000 brands for women's or kids' clothing, handbags, shoes, and more for a fraction of the price. You can customize your search by size, including plus sizes, your style, and your budget, so you can find the best deals instantly. Get the styles you love at a fraction of the price. You'll look and feel good with ThredUp. And for Food Psych listeners, here's an exclusive offer just for you. Get an extra 30% off your first order at thredup.com/foodpsych. That's thredup.com/FOODPSYCH for 30% off your first order. thredup.com/foodpsych for an extra 30% off today. Terms apply. And now, without any further ado, let's go to my conversation with Kelsey Miller. So Kelsey, welcome back to the show. I'm so excited to talk with you again.
Me too, Christy. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming back. It's been a minute. I think the last time we spoke was for episode 71, which was back in September of 2016, which so much has happened. So much has happened since then.
So many things expected and unexpected.
Yes. The world, our lives, all of it.
Exactly.
It's been a long 3.5 years. So catch us up on what you've been up to in your career, in your life since then, and where things have taken you since the last we spoke, which was when we talked about Refinery 29's 67% project.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, that was a really good time. Well, I guess since then, I continue to write about the subjects that I wrote in the Anti-Diet Project, but I actually formally concluded the Anti-Diet Project in its form. I'd been writing it for 5 years at that point. So that, exists as its own little time capsule on Refinery 29 right now. And I wrote another book, which was a pop culture history and critical commentary on the television show Friends, which is like extremely different from my first book. But, pop culture has always been something I'd written about. And I'd actually written a little bit about Friends, even in the Anti-Diet Project, because I, like many people, had feelings and experiences about Fat Monica.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And what else happened? Well, I got engaged and then I got married. And then a couple years later, I got pregnant and had a baby just about 4 months ago this week.
Oh, my gosh.
And now I'm writing another book. Yeah.
So much has happened in your life. I feel like it's like 4 years or 3.5 years is like the exact right amount of time for all those things to happen if it sort of lines up that way. So it's like your life is completely different now than the last time we talked.
It's true. It was one of those things where like everything happened all at once. Do you ever find that happens? Just like the biggest things in life just sort of happen over the course of like 1 week.
Yeah, I feel like the same actually has maybe been true for me in the last 3.5 years. I think I got married 3 years ago and a lot of life stuff kind of happened all at once. So that's funny. I want to get into all of that because I feel like all the life stuff that has been going on can definitely shake people's foundation sometimes with the anti-diet intuitive eating stuff. And, if not shake the foundation, then sort of take you to a deeper level with all of it and show you your new edge. Definitely want to hear all about pregnancy and baby. But first, let's start with the beginning with the wedding stuff. What was that like? Getting married, having to buy the dress, having to be in the pictures, all of that stuff when you were, still in the process of healing your relationship with food, or you were in a good place when all that happened. But still, I can imagine that it would definitely shake things up.
Yeah, it did. And you know what I think it was? It's that I was in a good place and I was so sort of settled and comfy in that good place that I didn't really even take a moment to prepare myself for the fact that it might shake things up or it might actually be super emotional. That's incredibly like cocky and ridiculous of me, especially given like I have so many other experiences in my life where that proved to me that life changes happened and that brings up old stuff and you kind of have to just like take a minute to reset. I don't know. I think I might have just been like distracted by pretty dresses at that point and did not think about it. But I had a really hard time shopping for dresses. I found myself really angry a lot of the time because as shitty as things are in, fashion and regular retail in terms of clothing and size availability and inclusivity, it is like the bridal bubble is just like a more smaller, more intense, more condensed version of all of that bullshit. And also everything is like amped up a million times more expensive. And I kept coming into contact with plus size surcharging, which I didn't really know about before, where I'd go to have these fittings for designers whose dresses I absolutely loved. And I would just notice quite subtly that there was, a change in price when the dresses went above size or even size or, maybe above a size. And also bridal sizing, as you may remember, is like 2 sizes smaller on average than a regular retail size. So it's pretty crazy where the sort of cutoff was. And I did actually confront some of these designers and ask why was I being made to pay more and stuff. And they kept referring to things like extra fabric. And I'm like, you're just listing it as, one of the sizes that you carry. It's not extra fabric. It's the fabric that is required for the dress. So why, like, where is the cutoff? Like, why is it at this point not considered extra? Why is like a size not paying $400 more than a size is?
Right.
But a size is paying, $400 more than the size or something like that.
It seems so arbitrary because those numbers are so on one side of the cutoff, it's just the same for every size. And then on the other side of the cutoff, even if it's one size different, suddenly you're paying an exorbitant amount more for quote unquote extra fabric. Like, what the fuck?
Extra. What the fuck? I know. So I really got into it, at least one designer, the one whose dress I really wanted to buy. Then the person whose dress I did end up buying, Rebecca Schoneveld, actually, so she did have plus size surcharging. And she did have a slightly, a limited range. But when I went in there and I talked to her and I was getting fitted, after that, she eliminated plus size surcharging and she did expand her range. And I can't remember exactly the details of that, but it was like, you do have to dig. I had to go to a million different appointments, but I found a human who got it, who understood that this was, not okay. And she was somebody who really prided herself on ethical business practices and like doing the most eco-friendly production methods and paying her seamstresses a better wage than most. And I think when I pointed out to her that this was just sort of a systemic injustice within the system, she immediately course corrected. And I was really, really happy about that.
That's fantastic and speaks to how important it is to like clue people in who are social justice minded already to the fact that weight stigma is a social justice issue and that people can just incorporate that into the practices that they're already using to try to be more ethical and more just in all the work that they do. I love seeing that light bulb go off for people when they already get it in other ways. And they're like, oh yeah, of course this has to be included. Of course body size is another area of oppression.
Yeah. Oh my God. And like when you talk about the sort of weird and antiquated practices and things, like even when certainly when you're talking about like accessibility and price, like the bridal world, they've somehow sidestepped all the other sort of issues that the rest of the retail world has had to at least address or be confronted with, because it's just a small little segment that people are only in for a very small section of their lives. And so I think a lot of those really unethical and unjust practices have been allowed to remain in that industry for a really long time, completely unchecked. Because also when you're going into it, you're like, oh, you know what? Just get me the hell out of here. I'll get my dress and I'll get out of here. It's not like when you're done getting married, you're going to think about those people or go to those stores ever again.
Right. It just sort of feels like, hold your nose and get through it and then you'll get to the other side. But yeah, I mean, I've heard such horror stories of people getting married and getting fitted for dresses and the things that the tailors will say to them or the things that the designers will say to them about, you're going to lose weight, so we're going to have to go down a size, or like, how much weight are you planning to lose? Just assuming that it's going to happen. And God, for people who are already struggling with this stuff or in a place of recovery, it can just cause people to tip all the way back over into restriction and deprivation and dieting and disorder. And it's not okay. And I don't know why we assume, it's like it really is this sort of weird bubble of antiquated values and of like, women are these pretty princesses that have to adhere to these like very outdated standards that don't exist anywhere else in life. And even cis women who are not the traditional cis pretty princess woman in life are sort of pushed into this froofy, like pretty princess mold for wedding attire. And it's just not okay.
Yeah. It's not okay. So many things in that industry are just simply not okay at all. But what I think is probably the most unsettling thing is I really wanted a lot of things to be different about my wedding, like quote unquote non-traditional, not drastically non-traditional even, but like a little bit different. And at a certain point I realized it's actually a lot less. There were certain like traditions I didn't want to do, or like elements of a wedding that I didn't want to include. And I, at a certain point, realized it was actually much easier and less stressful and somehow less expensive to just go with the flow, to go with that insane flow. If you try to fight against it, you will lose. So I did it. I just didn't want to die on that hill. I was like, okay, fine. I guess we're going to do it the way everybody else did, but whatever. In the end, I had the most fun day. It was the most fun. I love the dress that I had. And I had to definitely relive a lot of the body acceptance stuff. I had to really, really, really redo that in a very acute way. And there's something kind of great about being a bride in that regard and doing it traditional way, meaning that you get like 5,000 photos taken of yourself and then you have to look in every one of them. There's a real element of exposure therapy in there.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah.
What was that process like for you, the seeing of the photos?
It was hard at first. I wrote about this actually on the Anti-Diet Project because, there was just like a zillion different angles and there's like, me making tons of different expressions and there's so much focus on you. And most of them are photos taken when I wasn't looking. So I'm not posed. And that definitely required a lot of like confronting my own image. And it was challenging. It was challenging. I think especially because the summer before I got married, I got a bad ankle sprain, and I had to sort of be immobilized on the couch for like basically a month. And that meant that like I gained weight, and also I like sort of lost some of the particular shape that my body was in at that moment, just from doing my regular, like eating normally and doing my sort of regular kind of basic exercise stuff that I was normally doing. And that certainly hit some buttons in my brain. That was definitely hard to adjust to. The fact that like, I knew I was never going to deliberately lose weight for my wedding, but it was an adjustment to be like, all right, I'm going to have gained a little bit of weight for my wedding. And it definitely wasn't super comfortable for me, but you know, I got over it, and it was just another opportunity to kind of fight through that bullshit in my brain in the end.
What do you think helped you do that? Because I know a lot of people, and I have folks in my online course or who ask questions on the podcast who say like, I'm getting married in a few months and I just am healing my relationship with food now, or I'm just discovering this anti-diet message now and want to jump in wholeheartedly, but I'm worried about doing it before my wedding and gaining weight and having the dress not fit or having the pictures confront me with a lot of difficult stuff. And basically, how do I do this? How do I embrace my body potentially changing before my wedding? So I'm curious if you have any tips for anyone who's going through that, or any, solidarity for anyone who's going through that, I guess, too.
Oh my God, solidarity, like crazy. I totally get it. Like the thing is, the reason why I wouldn't hesitate to jump into this, or I tell people not to hesitate to jump into this no matter what, is that I had been practicing this stuff for several years. I was in a very good, solid place. I had done the work and continued to do the work. And it's still dredged up stuff. I think you just have to accept that it's very likely that, when you get married or when you go through any major life transition, a lot of your old stuff is just going to come to the surface and ask to be looked at again. I'm pretty sure there are like psychologists who have a theory based on that, right? I think that's a thing. That's not just me.
No, it's not just you. It's not just anyone listening. It's a total thing that we kind of fall back on those old coping skills that we developed earlier in our lives and that might not be serving us now. But, it's like the wiring of those is deep and makes so much sense when you're under stress and when things are changing to fall back to the thing you know.
And when you accept that and you know that going in, it just makes it a lot easier when it comes up. So I would say to people who are like saying, okay, I will do this, in 3 or 4 or 6 months or next year when my wedding is over, I would just tell them like, I think it's going to be stressful no matter what, this whole stage. I would really encourage you to like integrate this wonderful thing into your life and like actively be pushing against the wedding diet industrial complex's forces that are going to come at you anyway. I think it's a great time. To start accepting your body. And then the wedding pictures will come back and that'll be almost a whole new phase for you. And it really can be a wonderful thing.
Yeah, that's such a good point, that it's going to happen no matter what. You're going to go through this challenge no matter what. And wouldn't you rather be equipped with the tools in a way to push back against all the patriarchal bullshit that's going to be coming at you in the process of planning a wedding? No matter what gender you are, there's going to be patriarchal bullshit that's happening around a wedding, that you're going to be sort of pushed into a specific role, even if you're not the bride, quote unquote. And why not give yourself that practice and start practicing now, like engaging and navigating and pushing back on those forces, rather than saying, I'm just going to wait, and then letting those things completely control you for however long it is you're planning your wedding.
And become part of that wiring in your brain. Like, don't put more bullshit in there that you're going to have to undo if you can avoid it,
Yeah, because I know so many people too who look back at their wedding photos and are like, if only I could be that thin again. The wedding photo becomes this sort of new mirage that they're chasing. And why do that to yourself, especially with something that, if you're having a wedding, I mean, people have weddings for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes families push it on them or whatever, but hopefully there's part of you that's doing it because you enjoy it and because you want to enjoy it. You want to celebrate your partnership and get together with all your friends and family and have a great time. And so like, yeah, why take away the sort of joy of that? Why infringe on that joy with this idea that your body is supposed to be a certain way or that you're supposed to be depriving yourself? Why make yourself angry and deprived and hungry and, sort of less present in those moments by trying to shrink yourself?
Seriously. I'm so pissed. I actually did not get to eat my wedding cake because I missed it. I don't know what.
No.
I think it's because of dancing, because the DJ was so amazing that I just never, ever, 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 ever stopped dancing, which is very unusual for me. And then all the wedding cake was gone. And I was like, I'm one of those brides who didn't eat her own wedding cake, but for a different reason, because I was having so much fun.
That's the reason you should miss your wedding cake, not because you're worried about the calories or whatever.
Oh my God, please don't ever, ever think about calories on your wedding. Oh my God, please just be dancing and get a good cake.
Yes, get a delicious cake. I mean, that's amazing. It sounds like it was such a great day and so much fun. And I know for me, my experience is a little different because I have the privilege of living in a thin body. I don't have to deal with the external weight stigma stuff that gets triggered for plus size folks. But for me, it was still, again, also like I was years into my recovery. I was years into practicing intuitive eating again and like teaching this stuff and doing this work. And yet when I saw the pictures come back, it still was very confronting. I still was like, oh God, that's what I look like? Oh God, there's some little diet culture thoughts that came up that were like, oh, you look bigger than you should, or you look bigger than, it's like, I look bigger than I thought I did. And,
oh man,
it's like, oh God. But then I feel like that moment was rough because I was also like disappointed that those thoughts had got me, even though I've done all this work to try to get away from them. But I was able to say in that moment too, like, okay, but you know what? I was having a great time and I can't let the like snapshot of myself having all this fun detract from the actual memory of what it was like to have all that fun and like the presence and the physical experience, the embodied experience in my body of what that was like. These pictures are just an outside observer, not even a human observer, really. It's like a mechanical observer. The camera doesn't see us the way that other human beings see each other. It's just capturing this tiny split-second moment in time that sometimes is like a very awkward, weird face or like a weird way of standing or whatever it might be that I think other people don't notice because they're sort of in, we're all in motion all the time and people are able to, our brains are able to sort of connect the dots and not just think of a person as this one static, awkward moment. And so I think just sort of having done all the work that I did in the past to divorce pictures from the embodied experience of what that moment was actually like, and to say that picture can never fully represent what I know to be true about that moment, I think was really helpful. And also there's the privilege of living in a thin enough body that no one commented about me on my wedding day or leading up to it or anything like that. Tailors didn't tell me I needed to lose weight, all of that stuff. So I'm sure that insulated me somewhat from that pressure and that pain. But, I think it was helpful to go through that still and to have that moment of being like, oh shit, okay, this is where there's a little diet culture gremlin still hiding in this corner of my life. And now I've gone through it and I've eradicated that gremlin. And that gremlin is, hopefully I'll never have another wedding again. So I'll never have to go through another wedding with, a little diet culture gremlin kind of like looking over my shoulder as I look at the pictures.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And now you're even better equipped if and when you confront another one of those gremlins, you have like the internal monologue all at the ready. You've been down that road before.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I think that's also very good, helpful equipment for the future, whatever comes my way in terms of having a family and like dealing with body changes that come with aging and all of that stuff, because that's another thing that, another one of those life moments that can be so confronting.
Yes, confronting is the word. Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit, like the pregnancy piece and the new parenthood piece and how that has affected your relationship with your body or brought up things that you were, maybe those little gremlins hiding in the corner that you weren't aware of or that you didn't know were coming.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say up front, like this stuff, I obviously have not as much perspective on. I have almost no perspective on because it's so immediate in my life. And to be totally honest, I haven't really talked about this like in my personal life so much. I haven't written about it much. I wrote one essay about it when I was pregnant for a cup of joe, but that was in my like second trimester and things changed, and like postpartum is a whole other thing. And there were some real surprises that I still haven't sort of found the narrative on just yet, I guess. So it's all going to come out kind of in fits and starts, I think, and it's a little bit raw. But I think one thing that really surprised me was that I have PCOS and I was diagnosed pretty young. And I'd been on birth control for most of my life. I mean, certainly since my early adolescence. And I didn't really know what was going to happen when I came off of it. And surprisingly, just my period came back, and then it came back again, sort of like, and I think I had time to have 2 periods, and then I got pregnant. It was kind of a shock because I was fully prepared for the very strong likelihood that, this might not happen for me. And if it did, it probably would take a really long time, and it would almost certainly take a certain amount of intervention. And, what's interesting is that it wasn't like my gynecologist was telling me that, or even doctors were telling me that. It was just what I had heard about PCOS. I'd honestly never been told that in a doctor's office, that it was almost certainly going to be hard or impossible or something like that. But then I was just convinced it was. And I think it's because I was just so used to thinking of my body as a failure, as something that didn't work the way it should. And that all goes back to it not looking the way it should. When you have this concept very early on that your body is wrong, that applies to basically everything about it on a sort of fundamental level. So that was a surprise for me. And I mean, on top of the fact that most people I know who've had children, it didn't happen right away, because I think that's just not how pregnancy usually goes. I think even for people who've had the most regular cycles and the most quote unquote normal bodies, whatever that means, it just doesn't happen like that. So yeah, it was a surprise to me. We were talking about trying to start getting pregnant in the spring of last year. And then I was walking home from the gym in January, I guess, after we come back from a long trip abroad for the holidays. And I think I was listening to some podcast where people were talking about infertility and PCOS. And I was like, oh, well, you know what? I said to my husband, my mom, I was like, well, let's just give it a shot just to get the anxiety out of the way, because it's not going to happen. And, it's going to be really anxious when we first try to do this anyway. So let's just go for it or something. And he was like, oh, I thought we were talking about April. And I was like, I know, but it's not going to, I was like, let's just get the practice run out of the way. And that was it. And now I have a daughter. It was so sometimes that's surprising.
It's so surprising what our bodies can do. And just that expectation that it was going to take so long and it was going to be so hard was just completely turned on its head.
Completely turned on its head. I mean, I hope it's not whatever. Sorry, Harry, it's TMI, but we had unprotected sex twice.
Wow.
And that was so then I think most people who have been through a pregnancy, I went through a very, 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 very long time of thinking that something was going to go wrong one way or the other. And I don't know how much of that is to do with my body stuff and how much is just to do with the fact that pregnancy feels very mysterious, and it always feels very precarious, and your body is going through this thing and everything feels weird, and you don't know when it's normal weird or when it's weird in a way that means something is going wrong. So it really put me in tune with my body in a new way. And I felt like I was always kind of listening to my body. Even before I got the positive pregnancy test, I had all these weird sensations in my body. And I didn't know what was going on, but I was aware that something was percolating. And then of course, for most of pregnancy, you're just going to the doctor all the time. And most of those doctor's appointments are, at a certain point in pregnancy. I think basically starting at the end of the first trimester. But it's literally just you go in, you get weighed, you get your blood pressure taken, you pee in a cup, and they listen to your belly. And that's the whole appointment. So it was a little bit I was prepared again for a fight when it came to the weight stuff. And I was really lucky to go to a practice very popular in New York, and it's very progressive. And they did actually have a genuinely inclusive, broad range of robe sizes, for example. And that was really exciting. And I think I even saw one or two of their doctors on that list. I don't know where it is, but I was like, when I was Googling around for like obstetricians who were fat positive or not fat negative, I guess. There was like, I found a list of doctors somewhere and I don't remember where, but like if you Google it, I think it's still just like one page on the internet. So I saw doctors on that from that practice there. And then so when I went in, I told them right up front, please don't tell me, please, I'm not going to look at my weight, and please don't tell me what it is unless something comes up and I need to know about it. Like if something changes in a way that like I need to know, then please go ahead and tell me. Otherwise, just like keep it to yourself. Happy for you to have that information. That's completely fine. But like, I don't need to be in the loop on that. And the doctors were like, sure, totally. Gotcha.
That's amazing. You didn't have to like go through a whole rigmarole of like, I've had an eating disorder and this and that. And like, I just write refused in my chart or anything like that. They're just like, nope, it's fine.
Yeah, it's true. And probably, you want to talk about privilege. I mean, yeah, I'm a plus size woman, but I am not at like the higher end of plus side. I'm sort of in like the medium low end of plus size. So like, I think that probably, of course, there was like an element of privilege there. But I was really happy that my doctors were cool with just like keeping me out of the loop. It didn't mean that they remembered not to mention my weight every single time. I think it definitely at a few months in, because I was at a practice, which is very common in OBGYNs, where you see different doctors in the practice because you don't know who's going to be on call when you deliver. And not all of them like got that memo. But it was, for the most part, it was totally fine. And I think I was prepared for like a super dramatic change in my body in pregnancy. And I think I was preparing kind of quite the opposite for when I got married. I was preparing to like really go through a period of like self-loathing and having to like really reprocess. And, sure, there were some like moments like that. Like, I think especially in the beginning, I had a really hard time because I didn't know about things that happened in the first trimester. Like you just get extremely bloated all over your entire body. And then it's not like in your stomach, it's just like all over, like your hands, your fingers, your face, your whatever. And it was just sort of a weird, unexpected feeling because it was unexpected, I had a hard time with it. But then as it happens with everybody, like I kind of deflated and I just looked like myself for a really long time. And I'd say the thing that was possibly like a struggle, was a struggle, was the fact that I carry a lot of my weight in my abdomen area. I kind of have like thinner legs and I'm bigger on top. And I did not know if or when I would have what I pictured to be a pregnant looking belly. And for a very big percentage of my pregnancy, I'd say probably the majority of my pregnancy, I didn't look like that picture that you see when you Google image search like pregnant person. I just looked like me, but bigger. And that took getting used to, especially because some of that privilege that I experienced as a, slightly lower end of the spectrum plus size person was stripped away from me. And I started to get a lot more sort of direct glaring in public, or like people kind of almost like shaking their heads, or, sort of feeling that overt disdain that is directed towards fat bodies. That got, dialed up quite a bit for me. And I was really torn between constantly wanting to like look more pregnant and also being afraid of people knowing I was pregnant, because I had heard, the horror stories about other, people like Tess Holliday, what she went through when she was pregnant, and the kind of comments that was directed at her and like that are still directed at her as a mother. She's just like completely shredded as like somebody who's like incredibly irresponsible for even having children, and like how dare she be a mother, and how dare she be this fat when she has children to be there for. And like, I'd heard stories about like, parents having to speak to ACS like in the hospital because it was assumed that they were like neglectful and things like that. And I was really terrified of that. Even though my experience in the medical community throughout my pregnancy was didn't indicate that that would be the case for me. I was just so afraid. I mean, we've all heard those stories. So for a long time, I had that weird tension. And then, I don't know, maybe around 6.5 or 7 months pregnant, I was like, okay, I think it's obvious now. I think it's obvious. And I started also getting this funny thing happened to me where I was not just accepting my body. I was kind of into the way I looked, and like, I was just like really into myself all of a sudden. I was just like, I kind of look great right now. I don't know. I was swimming a lot in the summer. I don't know. Maybe it was the sun I was getting. Like, I couldn't stand any other exercise after 4 months of pregnancy. I quit the gym and I joined a pool because that's like my happy place. And I don't know. I just like was really vibing on myself.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was really sort of lovely. I remember talking to one of my other friends who your listeners might know because Kelsey Osgood, who wrote How to Disappear Completely. And I was like, I feel like you're one of the only people I can actually confess to, but I was like, but I think I look really good right now. I'm really into myself right now. And she was like, cool, great, no problem. So jumping back a little, because I have PCOS, the one thing they told me that would be different for me in pregnancy was that I would have to be tested earlier and probably more frequently for gestational diabetes, because there's a much higher incidence of gestational diabetes if you have PCOS. So I had to do definitely the most like disgusting medical test of my life quite early on in pregnancy. It's where you do, a glucose tolerance test.
Drink the sugary stuff and then wait an hour or two or whatever, and you can't drink any water.
Oh my God, it's so horrible. It's so horrible. And I'd do it before just to like have my insulin like resistance levels like checked when I wasn't pregnant, so I knew it was going to be terrible. But so I had to do that early, and I failed the 1 hour, so I had to do the 3 hour, which is it's just sort of the most hideous thing you do because you have to like not eat or drink water even like before, and then get your blood checked 4 times. And like you end up like not eating for like, which when you're in the early stages of pregnancy is pretty awful because you get like super nauseous typically.
And also most people fail the 1 hour test. Like most people end up having to do the longer test. And so it's like, why are we even subjecting people to this in the first place?
God, I know. So I failed the 1 hour. I passed the 3 hour, but I knew I was going to have to do it again. And then, so yeah, early on in my 3rd trimester, I did it again and I passed, but it was like one of my levels was like kind of close to the limit. And I was on a research trip and I got this phone call that was like, hey, you technically passed, but one of your levels was a little bit close. We'd like you to come and take the test again. And at that point I said, let's just pretend I have it. Let's say I have it. Just write down that I have it. I don't want to take the test again. Let's act as, because all that you have to do when you have gestational diabetes, I mean, for the most part, the majority of people who get it is like you test your blood, you take a fasting level in the morning, and then you test your blood 1 or 2 hours after you eat.
With a finger stick, right?
With the finger stick. And I was like, I had only 10 weeks left of pregnancy at that point. And I was like, I would really rather do that for 10 weeks than do that nightmare test again. Because it just your day is destroyed. Nothing else is going to get done. And it sounds like I was like, if I'm close, then let's be conservative. I'd feel less anxious. I'm an anxious person. I would feel less anxious if we just took precautions anyway, regardless of the likelihood of me having it or not. I was happy to do it, to act as if I had gestational diabetes. So then I'm in this end of my pregnancy, towards the end of my pregnancy, and I'm having this sort of magical love affair with myself and feeling like I'm just so beautiful. And I have to admit, the sort of icky side of that, I think, is because I was losing weight off my body. Like my face was thinning out a little bit, probably because I was doing this finger sticking, checking my blood sugar, and like my diet slowly started to become much more limited than it usually was, partially because of finger sticking thing and partially because I was so pregnant that a lot of times like eating a full meal just like was not going to happen. I got to that point where there's so much like baby inside of you that there is not a ton of room for food. So you end up just sort of grazing. It was a very weird place to be. And So I was eating like, oh, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be specific, but it's not like I was like deliberately doing anything that I was just eating like a sort of limited range of food because it had to do with comfort and with the finger sticking thing. So I think I was by the end of it, like I think my face was thinner. I think my arms were thinner. And I think there was part of my brain that was seeing that and registering that as like, hooray. And it seemed to be true because then I had my daughter, and after the swelling and the fluids and everything subsided, which by the way takes a very, very long time, you are like full of fluid that I don't even really understand how that much fluid got like put into my body during labor and delivery, but like it did. There was just an enormous amount of fluid. Like my legs, I've never seen them like that. And my fingers, like one of my arms was constantly swollen for like a month. It's a very weird time postpartum. I think a lot of people don't talk about we all know that like postpartum bodies look different and like that like the tummy takes a while to retract, but I didn't know about things like all the excess fluid in your body has to be like processed and excreted. And that takes an extremely long time.
Yeah. And that's so important for people to know about in this culture where it's like, get your post-baby body back, blah, blah, blah. Like that's bullshit. And
oh my God, yeah.
Natural processes your body has to go through in order to get, just process out whatever fluids it accumulated during the pregnancy, which are important and life-giving for the baby. It's like your body has to do something with that. And that's not for you to do anything about. Your body's going to take care of it. It just takes a lot longer than we're told it should in diet culture, which sucks.
Yeah. And it just needs to be said that so much of the weight in pregnancy is not weight that you can ever get rid of through diet or exercise or anything. It's blood. It's fluid. If you had any kind of medical intervention at the hospital, it's that fluid too. If you had a C-section, there's also like air that gets pumped into you. I don't really understand. I don't know as much about that, but I talked to some other parents about that as well. I was like, I don't understand why. But it's there, and like that's in your body, and like that has to be kind of like worked out as well. And then you have this massive, massive shift in hormones that you're very aware of, and like you can feel it. But for some reason, I think we don't often think that should have an effect on like our appearance or our body shape.
And of course it does. Like, yeah, hormones always have an effect, and that's okay. And that's not something to like try to outrun or outsmart and change through food and exercise, because that's just going to lead you down such a toxic rabbit hole when your body's got this. Your body knows what to do. It's going to look different probably than you think it quote unquote should, or than we've been conditioned to think it should for a while. And learning to accept that, I'm sure, is a big challenge in this culture, and having gone through everything you've gone through and that everybody listening and I have also gone through, that's got to be kind of a mind fuck.
It is. But like everything is a mind fuck at that stage. So I guess I was just like, okay, everything's a mind fuck right now. I will just have to think about this later or something. Like I didn't even have the bandwidth to get all tied up in knots about it, really. I was just like, wow, surprise. Half of my body is all puffed up and I have to sleep sitting up because it feels like there's fluid sloshing around in me all the time. It's the weirdest thing. And then it passed. But when it passed, I did see, I was like, oh yeah, I am skinnier. I lost like weight off my body. Like I gained weight from like fluid and blood and baby and stuff like that. But like weight off my body, like did come off at a certain point. Not like a ton of it, but enough to notice. And I was also not expecting that. And that was another very, very weird diet culture gremlin to confront, because it wasn't about accepting my body as like a fat body. It was like trying to get my head around my body as like thinner than I expected it to be, or thinner than it usually is. It was a very, very, very weird thing.
That is so challenging in diet culture too, because it's filled your head with all this stuff about how being thinner and having a thinner body is better. And so to not get attached to that, to not let it derail you and make you think that you're somehow more worthy and that you've done something quote unquote right by having this thinner body is also really challenging. I feel like that's one of the things that for the people that I work with who very rare cases of this. This is not a common experience, and I definitely do not advertise intuitive eating for weight loss because of this, but there's, the rare person who, when they start eating intuitively, they may lose some weight. Most people end up gaining weight. A lot of people end up staying the same, but some people do lose some weight. And I feel like that is even more challenging for some of the people that I've worked with than it was to accept weight gain previously for them, or than it is for people who just gain weight to accept that.
Yeah. Oh God, it was so weird. It was so weird. Because of course, the old voices in my head now were not the voices that were like, you're a piece of fat shit, you're awful, you're ugly, you need to change. It was like, oh my God, you did it. I felt like when I had went on my first diet, when I was in my first diet, when I lost a ton of weight in elementary school and stuff like that, I felt like that. Oh, new clothes, and yay for you, and everybody wants to be your friend now, and oh, look at that, aren't you just so special? You're the lady who lost weight when she was pregnant. Oh my God, Christy. Ooh, ooh, ooh. It was messy. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you hang on to your intuitive eating and body acceptance with all those voices in your head?
I don't think I put a ton of conscious effort into it because I didn't have the ability or the time or space to put a ton of conscious effort into it.
Because you had a baby to deal with now.
Because I had a baby to deal with, and because I had to changing a pad 11 times a day. You know what I mean? I was I was still learning how to walk around my neighborhood. That I had so many other things to focus on. And the weird thing that happened, this was both me and my husband in the first 10 days or so after we came home from the hospital. So one of the many wonderful things, one of the things I miss desperately about the hospital is that there's somebody who shows up every morning and asks you exactly what you would like to eat every day. And actually the hospital I delivered has famously good food. So I was eating very nourishing and very delicious fresh food. And there was somebody who would come with a tray and gave it to me. And so it'd be time to eat. And your only job when you're in the hospital is to just take care of your baby and eat and sleep when you can. And then you go home and feeding yourself, it just seems impossible. So there, like I said, the first 10 days, it was just felt like we just constantly forgot to eat. And I never felt hungry. It would just suddenly, I would eat a scone or something like that. And then it would, in the morning, and then all of a sudden it would be 3 a.m. and I'd be like, what? Wait a minute. And I totally forget. Again, there's all this stuff going on in your body. There's all this stuff going on in your brain, not the least of which is adrenaline. So I went from being super in tune with my body to just feeling like I'd been turned inside out, and eating was the last thing on my mind. And then people would come by and bring treats, or they'd send treats and stuff like that, or we would occasionally think to order food. But it felt like at a certain point we just ate cake for 3 weeks. I think that's just kind of what happens when you have a baby, is you basically just eat cake for 3 weeks. I'm not really sure how it happened, but there was cake and pie in the apartment, and we were up feeding this baby all the time. This is a whole other side of the story, but as many parents have dealt with, we dealt with our baby, quote unquote, losing too much weight after birth. Believe me, I understand there's a whole other memoir and that whole thing. Because of course that continues. The body bullshit starts at birth. I'll tell you that much. But we had this thing where we had to at first I think we had to wake her up every 90 minutes to try and eat. And she was a 90 newborn who just wanted to sleep. And we were just just screaming in this tiny baby's face. Up and forcing her basically. And so we were just up all the time with the baby who desperately wanted to sleep, and we couldn't let her. So we're just I have some pictures, some weird selfies that I took at 2, 3, 5 in the morning from that period, where I'm just lying in bed with a breast pump attached to me, eating pumpkin pie off a paper plate, or just whipped cream out of the container that came with the pie. Whatever it was, whatever food there was, which was mostly cake and pie.
Cake and pie are such great foods to be eating in those times too, because it's if you can't think about anything else and you just need to get food, why not have it be the most delicious food?
It is. But at a certain point, I also was I really miss other food groups.
Right.
Starting to become aware of my body now, and it doesn't feel amazing right now. And I just feel I would like to eat something that is that doesn't have whipped cream on top of it. Just once.
Right.
For one.
Just once. That'd be great.
So even in that period, I think just going. I don't think my weight changed all that much. But eventually, as life started to normalize, my body started to go back to where it was as well. And that was also challenging because I had to fight against those voices in my head that were so excited when I was thinner right after having a baby, because I don't know, like a month or two after having a baby, I looked pretty much like the same way that I did before I got pregnant. And now I think I'm a little bit higher than what I was because, life is totally different now. And I'm very happy to be eating more food groups now, but it's still not normal. Life's not normal yet. And so it makes sense that my body hasn't reached any kind of stasis at this point. But I'm in the thick of it. I'm in the thick of it right now. I'll be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds so disorienting, all of it. Just having a new baby in general completely upends your life. And then having your body change through pregnancy, which it's going to. And I think we're prepared for it to change in certain ways, but not as prepared for it to change in others. And so when there was that unexpected weight loss, it probably was like, I'm sure I can imagine it would activate all of those voices in your head that were like, this is it. It's finally happening, like the thing that diet culture had been pressuring you to do your whole life. It seemed like that had happened effortlessly, right? But then no, of course not. Of course, it's not that sort of unintentional weight loss. Generally speaking, when it happens because of pregnancy or illness or whatever else is going on in a person's life, oftentimes reverts back once the body sort of rights itself and calms down from that initial adrenaline shock. And so that, accepting that has got to be a whole other level of it wasn't this thing that I was excited about and also problematically and was frustrated with myself for being excited about.
Yeah. If only I had the mental capacity right now to truly process these things instead I'm just doing it on your podcast.
That's fine. This is a space for it.
This incredibly long monologue.
No.
Because literally that's what I'm doing because I don't have my head around it now. I'm still figuring it out. My body still doesn't, it feels more like it did before, but my life is totally different now. And frankly, actually, one thing that has been hard is that I've been able to I went back to the gym once right after I got cleared to exercise again. And that was really exciting because it made me feel a little bit more like my old self, but never since then, never once since then. The only reason is simply that just I have so many other priorities now, and I haven't figured out how to put myself first in many ways. And the new normal is still establishing itself. And so my body is, and my eating is, and my movement is, it's all still in the process of gelling.
Yeah. Well, completely understandable. 4 months is really no time at all. And the fourth trimester, they say, right, is the first 3 months of the baby's life when they're out. Really, we should be still gestating at that point. It's just that human bodies weren't able to accommodate babies' heads getting as big as they need to get for human brains. And so we eject them 3 months early, and then they're kind of still cooking in those first 3 months. So it's really you're so basically feels much more attached, much more, you have to be there for them so much more, it seems in the first 3 months than probably every month after.
I think I did expect that. And I did feel that way. And the fragility, they seem so fragile at that time. And they're so tiny and so sleepy. And it's so easy to just project a million fears on them at that stage. But I have to say, I think the stage that I'm in right now is significantly harder because not only am I not on any kind of maternity leave now, I'm a freelancer. So, it wasn't really a maternity leave. I just stopped working and making money for a little while to do this. But I'm trying to work now. And, my brain also hasn't figured out how to write a book and also be a parent and also be a friend and also be a partner and also just be myself. I have not figured out that balancing act yet. And I strongly suspect I will always be working on it. But it's pretty all over the place right now. It's pretty chaotic right now. But the other thing about it is like when they wake up from that fourth trimester, they really are suddenly, they have opinions that they can express. A 4-month-old can tell you when she is bored. So it's not like you can like sit around sort of just snuggling your baby while you watch The Crown, which I did, when she was first born. It's hard in a different way now because she's learning and she's rolling over and like trying to crawl, which is bananas. And I have to explain to her that she's 4 months old and it's not going to happen. But like, go for it, girl. I mean, I love A for effort. I love it. But like, can you please learn how to roll from your belly to your back so that I don't have to worry about you in the middle of the night anymore? It's just constant developmental changes. And so it's hard in a new way, but it's also a lot more fun. The whole parenting thing is, I have to say, a lot more fun than I expected it to be. The whole baby thing.
That's good to know because I feel like it gets framed oftentimes as such a slog, and it's like your body's not your own anymore and your life is not your own anymore. And there's so much work attached to it. But yeah, I mean, kids are freaking adorable too.
Oh my God.
It's real cute to look at a baby.
The one thing that I say to people a lot, and I feel like it's worth saying on your show, if I may, is that I think that having gone through this, and I know that this is not the case for every single person, but in my case, I felt like I was prepared for things to be horrible for all of pregnancy and really horrible with a newborn. And pregnancy for me, even with things like sticking my finger for the last 10 weeks of it, or having to do that disgusting test more than many people, and having a third trimester New York City summer, it was not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. And the same thing, I had the same thought when I was in labor and when I was in delivery. When I was in the delivery room, I remember like looking over and being like, I could do this again. I could do this. This is okay. I mean, really, really and truly. And so that was sort of nice to know because I was expecting it to be like, I'm being like ripped apart with every contraction. I was like, okay, well, no, this isn't a blast. And yes, I will have that epidural. Thank you. But like, I'm glad to know that like this isn't the worst thing in the world. And certainly having a newborn also, I was expecting much worse and much harder and just like a living hell. And it wasn't. There are really, really brutally hard parts, but like there was a surprising, like my brain, and I've heard this from other people too, like my brain kind of stepped it up for me and like saved me. And there's good sides to those hormones too, because they kind of float you through, I think, some of those changes on like a comfy, cozy bed of oxytocin. We actually got like crazy baby fever in the hospital. We were like, should we just have another one like right away? Which was just, I mean, now I'm like, okay, no, I take it back. Just think about this later. But like in that moment, like in the hospital, literally in the delivery room, Harry, my husband, and I were just like, she's so awesome. This was great. Let's just do it again right now.
Those hormones are so powerful. They're so real. And like, I think that is kind of why the human race exists, honestly, is that like there's that oxytocin and it's like, yay, babies, we love them. We're not going to abandon them. We're going to take care of them and have more. Grateful for those hormones. And it's interesting too that those hormones, like you said, they're so protective. They keep you going. They keep your brain functioning when you're super sleep deprived and don't know what the hell you're doing and all this stuff. And yet they're so demonized in terms of like what the effects are on our bodies. And it's sort of, again, going back to that dichotomy that we were talking about with like the pictures, where what is happening on the outside is not matching up with the sort of inner experience, the embodied experience. How you perceive what's happening on the outside anyway doesn't match the inner experience, which feels so much better than what we've been conditioned to perceive on the outside, which really I think is the conditioning from diet culture. You know, it's the conditioning of demonizing larger bodies and demonizing bodies changing shape or not looking the way that we're conditioned to think they should, when it's like, well, who is to say? Like, who says that a postpartum body should look any sort of way? Who says that a postpartum body should look the same or different or match up with some external ideal? It just is what it is. And those hormones are going to do what they're going to do. And it's going to have probably confusing effects, unexpected effects on how your body looks, but that's not the point at all. The point is that, brain boost and that oxytocin boost and that, it's all the things that the hormones help us do so that we can survive and feel good and not curl into a ball and just give up.
Seriously, this is like the weird, dirty secret that I've had this conversation with several other parents too, where it was the first 3 months, I was like, I don't feel sleep deprived. Aren't I supposed to feel really, really tired right now? I was like, I don't feel tired. And it wasn't until, I don't know, maybe after 2 months or something like that, then I started to be then it's caught up with me. And suddenly I did start to feel a little bit sleep deprived, but not really in the beginning. And the only explanation is that my body really stepped up for me and carried me through. And I have to just I stand in awe of that. I mean, yeah, good job, body, making this magical, wonderful baby who I love more than anything in the world. Also, good job making me feel really good job at helping me feel awake for the first couple months of her life.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's actually really great to hear too, that the sleep deprivation that we're told we're going to feel may not happen. And that's also the magic of bodies and hormones, how they keep us going.
Yeah, nothing. You can't expect. You really, I'm trying to make do wordplay here, but I don't have it in me now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure.
You can read what to expect, but you will never be able to expect everything. And a lot of the things that surprised me were actually super positive, wonderful, happy surprises.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so good to hear. Oh, thank you for sharing all of that and for processing out some of the stuff that you're going through and you're in process of with your body and with food. And hopefully next time we talk will be much less than 3.5 years from now for the podcast anyway.
Oh, yeah, please.
We can catch up and see how things are going once you have a 1-year-old or whatever.
That sounds great.
Yeah,
that's great.
Sure, it'll be a whole different world then too. And I mean, I wanted to talk about feeding kids, and we're totally out of time now. But next time we can get into that more because that is such a whole other thing.
Book me right away. I have so many things to say. I'm about to start solids this weekend, Christy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's a big step.
Yeah, I am so pumped, but also so scared. And there will be so much to talk about. Yes.
Yes. Oh, good. Well, we'll get that on the calendar soon then.
Okay, great.
That'll be amazing. Thank you so much, Kelsey. This is such a pleasure. And can you tell people where they can find you online and learn more about your work?
Oh, right. Yes. It's been a while for me. You can find my website is kelseymiller.com, and you can find me on Instagram at Ms. Kelsey Miller and same handle on Twitter. And I'm also on Facebook somewhere. I haven't been there in a while, but I'm there and not making sense right now. But I promise to new listeners, I have been known to do good, relatively okay things with words. I'm usually better than I am right now.
You do amazing stuff. Your book is amazing. Both your books, and we'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes too, so people can find you and learn more about everything you do. And your daughter is adorable, and you share the cutest pictures of her on Instagram. So people should definitely follow you there for a daily dose of cute baby stuff.
Little Miss Margot.
She's adorable. I'm excited that she's starting solids too. That's a fun new chapter.
I know. What is the first thing I'm going to give her?
Right.
Just you wait, girl. There's so much more to eating than what you are eating right now.
Yep. You think this is something, huh? Just wait till you see avocado or whatever comes next.
I better hold off on avocado. I don't want to, that's going to get expensive.
Right. It's true. You don't want to start her tastes off the high end.
Yeah.
Maybe carrots. I don't know. That's cheap.
Yeah, maybe nice mushy carrots. But I'll save it for the next podcast.
Yes. I can't wait. Thank you again so much. This is awesome.
Thank you.
So that is our show. Thanks again so much to Kelsey Miller for joining us on this episode, and thanks to you for listening. If you've gotten something out of this podcast, please help us reach more people who need to hear the anti-diet message, because who doesn't in this culture, by sharing this episode and subscribing to the pod on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform, whatever that may be. You can see all the places to subscribe and share at christyharrison.com/subscribe. That's christyharrison.com/subscribe. And we'd love it if you'd leave us a nice rating and review in your podcast provider of choice, which also helps get the word out about the show. If you're looking for some practical tips to help you get started on your own anti-diet path, grab my free audio guide, 7 Simple Strategies for Finding Peace and Freedom with Food. Just go to christyharrison.com/strategies to get it. That's christyharrison.com/strategies. To get full show notes from this episode, including all the resources we discussed, plus a full transcript, just go to christyharrison.com/247. That's christyharrison.com/247. And to get the transcript, just scroll down to the bottom of the page and enter your email address. This episode was brought to you by ThreadUp. Saving on your closet just got a lot easier and more fun with ThreadUp. Get an exclusive offer of an extra 30% off your first order when you go to threadup.com/foodpsych. That's threadup.com/foodpsych for 30% off your first order today. Terms apply. A big thanks, as always, to our editor and sound engineer, Mike Lalonde, our community and content associate, Vinci Chue, and our administrative assistant, Julianne Watasek, for helping me out with all the moving parts that go into producing this show every week. Our album art was photographed by Abby Moore Photography and designed by Melissa Alam. Our theme song was written and performed by Carolyn Pennypacker Riggs, and I'm your host and producer, Christy Harrison. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay psyched.